So, fun fact about us in the press box, you bring your iPad to games, and that is useful because we are watching and rewinding if we want to catch a play again to catch some of the subtleties that we might have not gotten live on Wednesday. We were watching along with Austin Houston, watching a little bit of a delay, but I always keep an eye on some of the other results, especially during Open Cup time where it is win or go home. And we noticed that in the 117th minute, it was 3-3 between DC and Charlotte. And so, what did we decide?
Well, we decided that we needed to see how that played out because there are not any more dedicated Jared Stroud PK watchers than the two of us. And we felt like even if it was only 5 kicks per team, we would certainly see Jared Stroud, knowing that there was that level of entertainment coming. We had it tuned there. And that was not all, but we did get plenty of entertainment from that. We got a lovely grace note after what we got with DC Charlotte. Just really made it an Open Cup night to remember.
Let's walk you through where Jared Stroud came into this. So, DC, Aaron Herrera steps up, makes his first PK. Melanda steps up for Charlotte and misses. Jackson Hopkins, he makes his, kind of does this bro celebration. Pep Biel, one of Charlotte's DPs, come up, he misses his. Jared Stroud steps up. Remember, DC is up 2-0. Jared Stroud misses. Brant Bronico converts for Charlotte. And then everybody else after missed their penalties. It was 2-1. Penalties basically have about an 80% chance of going in. That's what the XG calculation is. They missed 7 out of 10, or 7 out of 10 were saved, using air quotes liberally here. So that was amazing. That was so much fun to watch. I mean, we were still obviously keeping an eye on Austin
Right.
Houston, but how can you resist?
Yeah, there are nice things about the fact that Paramount Plus has the rights to the rest of Open Cup. I wish that they had the same quad box capability via multi-view that
Mhm.
Apple produced games do, because we had to choose. We had to pick one thing or another, or the Golasso show whip around coverage. And so I was worried that we were going to miss something good. We saw the best thing of the night, which was that hilariously pathetic PK shootout between DC and Charlotte. But the timing just happened to work out nicely. That was done, and then I switched over to the Dallas Red Bulls game
Hmm.
just as Dallas whiffed their last kick.
Hmm.
And we were able to announce to the press box that Dallas was now out of Open Cup. And based on the way the results were looking at the time, it looked like Austin was about to be the only Texas team remaining in the Open Cup competition, as it should be, as we all predicted, as everybody confidently decided was definitely going to be the case.
And you know what that means?
What's that mean, Phil?
Austin just won the Copa Tejas of Open Cup.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies and emergencies around the world. Tottenham has won the Copa Tejas of Europe, and Napoli seems to be on fire. No, wait, no, they are just celebrating after winning Serie A, and your beloved team, Inter Milan, probably deserved to win that title instead. But your feelings, Moisés, on
Look,
joy and pain, sunshine and rain.
look. I'll say this, something that I think of freshly in the wake of Napoli rightfully winning the Scudetto. What competition they're not in anymore?
Mm,
UEFA Champions League.
okay.
Who is Inter Milan? I'll live. Inter won their 20th league title against their in-city rival last year. So I'm still living on the fumes of that. Congratulations to Napoli. The Napoli fans deserve it. They're celebrating it beautifully. They covered the field in smoke, I guess, in tribute to Diego Maradona, who also liked to cover rooms with smoke based on the way he liked to party. Congratulations to the Napoli fans. It's interesting looking at all of these European leagues, seasons ending right around now, and crazy things happening. And Frank, I'm spoiled as an Inter fan because They're active in multiple competitions. It's not, oh, this is the first European trophy that they're set to potentially win in 30 years, like Tottenham was, which I don't know that I can say I've got to hand it to Tottenham or their fans or their coach. But hey, they did win hardware and they deserve credit for that. Who did not win hardware? Manchester United. And that's just a fact. I'm not saying that out of any form of bias. I'm just saying that is a thing that happened within the last couple of days. The end of the European seasons, there's always something interesting going on in one or another of them, whether it is a down to the finish, who's going to come out on top, like in Serie A, where they moved up the Napoli and Inter matches. I thought it was just to juice attendance and boost advertising revenue or something like that. But I didn't realize that there was actually a fractional possibility that it was going to end up tied such that they had to do a playoff game between Napoli and Inter that would have had to be Monday because Inter plays PSG in the final in 5 days' time after that. It could have been real chaotic. And instead was, I guess, the least chaotic version of things. And if anything, probably probability wise, what was most likely to happen following last weekend's results. But yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of a release valve as things have been very high pressure, very stressful in watching the Austin FC race to decide what 2025 means to them as we're entering the summer months. I like to think of it as how is Austin FC prompting ChatGPT to write It's How I Spent My Summer Vacation essay? Is it going to be like last summer? Is it going to be a new crazy variant of last summer? And I don't know, as I think we alluded to on our abrupt night of emergency podcast, some surprise and delight in this phase of play for Austin, almost like Austin is watching Europe and going, we want some of that drama. We want some of that fun.
We're not gonna talk about the other half of the Champions League bracket, by the way. we're not bringing that up. We're not bringing up the Premier League.
What other half? There's only one bracket now. There's only one final, Phil. And I'm completely unconflicted going into it because PSG should go down in flames.
Right. So let's talk Open Cups. After that win on Wednesday and after we released that emergency podcast with Ilya Sanchez and some very kind of refreshing observations from him, if you did not listen to that, by all means, pause this, go listen to that one, and then come back and listen to this one because it's tremendous. It's short and sweet and gets a lot of his thoughts. We had the Open Cup draw on Thursday, and there's a dream scenario happening. It is 3 wins to a title for the 8 teams that are remaining. Austin didn't get a home match, but they maybe got what's the next best thing to a home match given the bracket. They are going to San Jose, and they're going to play the Earthquakes for the rights to possibly host the semifinals. You're rooting for Chicago, by the way. If Minnesota wins, we have another Austin-Minnesota battle. After Saturday, you're going to be really tired of that.
You say you're rooting for Chicago. It sounded like a threat. It's like, do I have to, Phil? No,
You do.
I absolutely
You do, and here's why. Because if Chicago
okay,
beats Minnesota, then Austin hosts that semifinal match. It's a redo of the 2023 Open Cup match. And that, again, not a very happy memory in Austin's history, but they would get to purge that. And then the West team gets to host the finals. So if Austin gets through to the final, you would be able to witness a Open Cup final at home. First opportunity to win a non-Copa Tejas trophy. And that would be great. Other than, wasn't there a preseason trophy they won or something ostensibly like back in their first season?
I don't know. Maybe there's a Coachella Cup or something like that. I don't know. You're catching me flat-footed here, Phil. I've literally got no clue.
Okay. I think I vaguely, dimly remember that there was, and everybody just chortled at the time. But thoughts about this? Again, it doesn't seem impossible. There are some good teams. The Union is on that east side of the bracket, and they've had, for me at least, a surprisingly good season given who they lost, but also definitely their midfield repaired itself far better than we thought it might have. And obviously, Minnesota is probably the best team in the West that's still in there. So if Chicago doesn't vanquish them, Austin has to do that trip again that they are doing on Saturday to Alliance Field to try to deal with that demon. But sets up much more nicely for Austin than we thought it might.
The possibility that Austin would have to play Minnesota 3 times in the span of, what is it, just over a month? That feels like a special amount of hell. That's the version of this that let's be real honest. Minnesota fans don't even want to see. That's not fun. Right. That's like Copa Tejas 2024, where things just don't make any sense and nobody knows how the math works, and people just get tired of seeing the same thing over and over. The very reason that Leagues Cup, the cup for which there are leagues and the leagues for which there is a cup, the reason they changed their format to ensure interleague play, at least going into the knockout stages, because it was, oh boy, guess who's going to play now? Columbus and Chicago. You never get to see that, do you, folks? Only in Leagues Cup do you get to see MLS teams from the same conference play each other. What an exciting, thrilling time.
Delivered us Dallas and SKC.
Oh,
a game that never has happened.
Oh,
except
gosh.
for 200 times.
Guess who Austin's going to play again? SKC. Do they have to? Is it a rule? None of this makes any sense. Yeah, I feel like as beneficial as the draw could be for Austin themselves, I think it's up to them to earn it. And in terms of the probability scenarios, I feel like we're looking at an interesting last stages of this year's Open Cup. I think it's going to be interesting no matter how things play out. And based on that 8 minutes of magic that we got from Ilie, based on other conversations that we've been having with players as they have been finding their footing, finding their form, drawing the top team in the West, doing far better against Cincinnati than we said. Even I feel the most pessimistic people were a little bit contradicted by how well they did against Cincinnati, which isn't to say that they did great. It isn't to say that they should feel proud necessarily, since that's the whole thing. Let's not be proud of good performances, I guess. Let's not be proud of progress, I guess. Pride it's a sin, I guess, is what people are told in church. That's what explains the fact that they should not be happy about progress, Phil. I think that they should be proud of the way that they showed up for that Open Cup game and the way that they played in the Vancouver game before it. And I feel like that thing that we have kept saying, oh, they really need to find that thing. It feels like they're about 2/3 of the way to feeling pretty consistently there. And I'm not just saying that because 2 of the 3 DPs seem to have figured things out. And the third one, I gather, is figuring that out. It really feels like they're taking every competition seriously. They're taking every game seriously. They are putting the best foot forward that they can. And whether you want to chalk it up to necessity or strategy, Nico is not the one going, I'm going to hold my best players for a 60th minute sub. I'm going to put our best foot forward. And that's the only way that best foot forward gets accustomed to being the best foot forward and being worth that $30 million and so on. The figures that keep getting mentioned. It feels to me like something that I said early on. I am grateful to the players and the coaching staff for making me seem like I was not completely out of my mind to say that I really felt like Austin was in it for the long haul and wanting to make a deep Open Cup run. I think that after some stumbling early on, they have shown that, if anything, the Cup is what has helped solidify them and make them more coherent.
Yeah. And again, just looking at the rest of the month, once we're going to talk about June in a little bit, and June gets easier. So they essentially just have to get through the rest of May. Again, that's been the big concern when we looked at the schedule. The team knows it. We have known it as fans. We have known it as media that it was going to be tough. It's going to be jam-packed with games. One of the happy things that we wanted to see happen, obviously, was getting through to the quarterfinal round of the Open Cup, and that has happened. But also, we did have some surprising results in there, right? We did not necessarily think that this draw against Vancouver was going to happen, and that did indeed happen. We had some other kind of surprises that were in there as well. I want to talk about what we predicted so far. My vision of how those games were going to go in May was a 2-3-2 sort of month. So that would be 8 points. So here's where we're at. Through these first 4 games, I thought Minnesota was going to be a draw. I thought Cincinnati was going to be a loss. I thought Atlanta was going to be a win. I thought Vancouver was going to be a loss. So that would be 4 points from those 4 games. And then thinking that there's going to be at least a win against Real Salt Lake and a draw against San Diego in there. So that would be the 8 points. That would be where we got to. So right now, lost to Minnesota, lost to Cincinnati, drew Atlanta, and drew Vancouver. So I thought 4 points out of those first 4 games. It's only been two, which is not great. Maybe there was a surprise, but I also had projected that this next game against Minnesota, in part because of all the rotation that's been happening, was going to be a loss. Could they surprise with a draw or even a win?
Looking at the 3 fixtures back to back,
Two back.
back to back to back. Nico is fond of going, oh, we're just focusing on the next game. Looking at Minnesota back to back with a home match against RSL and going away to San Diego, I feel like they can get a draw at Minnesota. I feel like it's doable. If they can get a draw against Vancouver, they can get a draw against Minnesota, even with some rotation. Even with some rotation, I'm not in any way unconfident about saying that's doable. If they can pull out a win against Minnesota, that is something of a trajectory and momentum changer. Phil, how many times did we get so accustomed for the Josh Wolf play for the draw? We didn't need more than a road point.
Right.
Technically speaking, I know that that's in the back of Nico's head of at a certain point of play, preserve at least a point rather than dropping a point, bunkering, that kind of thing. Sure, that will definitely come into a decision-making matrix. But I'm pretty confident that they are not in a position where they can afford to not go for the 3 points every time. I just, based on everything that Nico's said, and as much at face value as I have taken it, and as much as I've found that, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi from a certain point of view, everything he said has been pretty honest and straightforward. And as he dodged things occasionally and thrown down a smoke bomb about whether we might see Mikkel Dessler, who is listed as available for the Minnesota match, by the way.
Yep.
And Danny Pereira is listed as questionable. Robert Taylor's still out. I've got to keep taking him at face value until Nico betrays me. When Nico betrays me, that's it. Throw it out the window. Then I will start immediately taking everything he says as suspicion. I don't know. 3 points are achievable. And in the way that the 3 goals in this Open Cup match delighted us, and looking at things relativistically, the draw against Vancouver, frankly, turned out much better than I think anybody realistically expected. It feels like it isn't me heaping on the hopium and going into optimism land and going on the merry-go-round to go, hey, maybe this is part of that turning point, because we're seeing that steady progression of improvement. 3 points are doable.
Okay. Yeah, I like your optimism. I maybe do not share the same optimism just because I am very worried about the rotation. But if they were to get 4 or 5 points out of these next 3 games, there's got to be a win in there in order to achieve that. But if they can do that, and again, just depending on what the rest of the West does, June does get much better depending. We do apparently have a player on the way, Nicky Beloko. I know that some other people have watched tape and things like that on him. We don't have a lot of data on him because the Swiss League is not well served by data. FBref doesn't gather the kind of information that they gather from, say, MLS or the Premier League or La Liga. He's kind of a little bit in a mystery box. We think box-to-box midfielder. We think pretty athletic. We think maybe that indicates that either Wolf or Pereira are on the way out. It does not seem that this is the 10 that could be a transformative difference. Also doesn't seem like this is the TAM level midfielder that Austin might be after. So don't know what that means necessarily. The chestnut I hear from some of my friends is, yeah, I'll take him on a supplemental, but there might be ways to actually do that given kind of a salary and that he is out of contract. So there's no transfer fee that's involved with that. So that does make a kind of interesting additional kind of element to this, right? So if Taylor gets back and right and healthy, and then you have Dessler healthy and you have Gallagher able to rotate, not having to play like every full 90, because the man probably needs a little bit of a break, right? If they can tread water, as it were, the rest of May, I think that, again, June, there's 3 matches. They're all pretty beatable teams given where the records are and what they've been doing with their first part of the season. But much easier to deal with June than to deal with May and what's happened there. May is tough for everybody, but I think for Austin, especially given the injuries that kind of unfortunately converged with, oh yeah, they have to play a round of 16 Open Cup as well. They've got one more of those. That to me is a big concern. Any other thoughts on this before I want to go big picture in a second, but just thoughts on these May matches?
One more little thing, and then I'm going to bridge to saying something about Cascante as a possibly a leap to the big picture stuff.
Sure.
And also following on from what you were saying about roster, summer transfer window things there. To me, all 3 of these matches are comfortably drawable. It's not outside the realm of possibility to get a draw in all three of these. Getting a draw out of two of them and a win out of one of them, maybe it's the home match against RSL, maybe it's upsetting San Diego at home. There's a big traveling contingent of fans that are going. I think that it's reasonable to look at those kinds of mixed prognostications of what the end of May could look like. What would be fascinating is if that doable but not necessarily likely win against Minnesota actually happens.
Right.
Is if instead of 4 or 5 points, we somehow end up seeing 9 points out of this.
Okay.
Which May is not an easy month for all these teams either. And one of the things that I'm going to be taking advantage of this being a road match and having multi-view and all that kind of thing is I'm going to see not just what we've been doing and keeping up with other teams in the league, but just looking at, okay, how is San Diego looking right now? How is RSL looking right now? And crazier things have happened. Then one or two key players drop out, and then you suddenly have some backline issues, have some midfield issues that create a hole to exploit. And so I say this next bit with no intention of disrespect to Julio Cascante, but I think that it bears mentioning that even as it stands, Austin could probably do with another center back to shore things up as they have them.
Yep.
And if they intend to allow Cascante's contract to expire at the end of the season, then they got to be looking at stacking that up double. They've got to be looking at more center back options. And from what Roto and other members of the sporting operation have said, they are wanting to stack themselves younger and more flexible. They are wanting more Bureaus. They are wanting more Gallaghers. They are wanting right back Owen Wolf, as an example. They want more of those Swiss Army knives, not necessarily from Switzerland, even if they have Swiss citizenship, as one rumored possible transfer does.
Right.
If something's going to happen with Cascante, it probably doesn't happen until the off.
I think there is a second one I want to say. Yeah. So that could be a possibility. Also, again, I have nothing to base this on, but if he wanted to return to Costa Rica, Saprissa is a team that could theoretically get him. They might want him in the summer. Maybe there's a way to offload him there, but then you have to, again, part of this is going to be, okay, if Beloko comes and he's taking up an international spot, you're probably looking at a domestic center back unless you can either get a green card for a player or you can offload another international player. Bison going was good in that it freed up an international spot and gave a little bit more flexibility, but there's still three healthy actual center backs on this team right now. And I think everybody would feel a lot better if there was a fourth. And I'm sure that's going to be a priority in summer, just because, again, injuries happen. And when injuries happen, as we know from 2023, it starts a domino effect of so that is not something that we want, given that we already have had a few injuries this summer or this May rather. We've had a few injuries this May, and that has definitely taken its toll, especially if, again, we still need to see what the rest of the month does. That RSL match, I think, has to be a win, though. I mean, must win is a loaded term, but Minnesota is second in the West. San Diego is third in the West. If you draw or lose to them, that's understandable. RSL's 12th in the West. They have one DP right now. Diego Luna is a great player. Gonzalez is their DP. They got rid of Arango right before the start of the season for reasons, and they haven't really done as much to replace him as they probably needed to. So they've definitely been feeling it there. And again, you look at the standings right now, and you've got San Jose and Austin, 8th and 9th on 18 points. You've got Colorado a point above them. You've got Seattle a point above them, but you've got Houston and Dallas right underneath Austin, as it should be, but 2 points separating Austin from those other two teams. Houston and Dallas are both on 16 points right now. So it's very tight in the West. And what happens in these next three games could theoretically shuffle the standings going into June in a way that, again, if Austin is not careful, and we're going to get into kind of what I want to get into in a second here in terms of kind of thinking about where they are at this stage of the season, this could be crucial because, again, we have seen good starts from this team, and then we have seen those good starts squandered.
To me, aside from the 9 points, 3 straight wins being the ideal of ideals, to me, the next most ideal is draw against Minnesota, win against RSL, win against San Diego. The
Okay.
reason I think I might, because I never pay attention to the betting odds, I don't care about the betting odds ever, nor will I.
Right.
The reason that I feel more optimistic about the San Diego win, even though it's an away game, even though, is because I think that Nico, coach v. coach, has that one. And that is what led to the home win against San Diego. It wasn't necessarily overall quality, it wasn't overall cohesion. It was coach v. coach. Nico understands his opponent's mind really well when we're talking about San Diego. If we are seeing 7 points out of these next 3 games instead of the 4 or 5 that would be good, that's also really nice.
Yeah.
But man, if we see a win against Minnesota, I don't think it's out of the question. That is the heater that carries us out of the month of May.
Right.
And into the more relaxed June. I don't think it's as unlikely as it might look on paper, as it might look spitballing. But I'm 100% with you that RSL is a must win. It's a must win because there's no excuse for it to not be a win for the reasons you already enumerated. And I don't mean it in the respect of, well, if Nico Estevez loses this game, then he's on the hot seat and so's Roto and everybody should be fired and heads on pikes. I do not feel like we are in that place. If we see 3 straight losses and then June starts going not well, that's a whole other conversation. But I don't think we even have a reason to speculatively look at that kind of pessimism because all I see is upward trajectory at the moment.
But if there are 3 straight losses, then I see us probably in 12th heading into June.
In RSL land.
Yeah. RSL would probably leapfrog us.
Yeah, they'd probably
They're only 4 points behind Austin right now,
Yeah.
and they would obviously, that's a 6-pointer. They would obviously get a 3-point jump on Austin with just that win alone, if that is indeed an RSL win, which we are hoping it is not. I'm going to do an article which is going to come out probably shortly after this podcast drops on Saturday morning. At least that is the plan, because I do want to get something up before this Minnesota game. And what I'm dealing with is in this article, what I'm exploring in this article is this kind of idea of the turn, right? So we are 14 games into the season. The 17th game happens on the 31st. So looking at where they've been at that halfway point, where they are right now and where they are at the end of the season. And I've done some math on this. So right now, Austin is on 18 points. So that is 1.29 points per game. Do you have any kind of guesses out of the 5 seasons where that ranks among their starts after 14 games?
Pretty on par with other seasons.
But numerically, do you think it's their best, their second best, their third
I would say
best?
third.
It's third, yeah. They were on 2.07 points in 2022, which of course the magical 2022 season. And then they were actually on 1.57 points last year. They were doing much better in the first part of the season. And then by the halfway point in 2022, Austin had jumped up to 2.11, but they finished the season 1.64. 2024 last year, they were at 1.52 at that halfway point turn. They ended up with 1.23. There is only one season in which points per game at the end of the season was better than at the halfway mark, and that was in 2023. They were 1.12 points per game at the halfway point. They were 1.14 points per game at the end of the season. And again, that is the broken center back season, where obviously that first half of the season was tough. So again, we think about the summer heat. We think about, again, just the impact on players and this kind of idea of, oh, Austin has this built-in home field advantage in the summer. But I'm wondering if maybe, again, that takes a toll on them as well. So again, the one thing that concerns me is, I think there are a few things that concern me still, including how many goals they have scored.
One thing, Phil.
Or how many, exactly. But just this idea that they are tending to slump in the second half of the season, right? That 2024 season, they were 7-5-5 at the halfway point. They went on a 4-9-4, falling on their face to go out of the playoffs. And again, you will remember that's the season that had I believe that 2023 was the season where they had the 2 straight 8-game winless streaks, but they hit just kind of some incredible bits of terribleness in 2024, which coincided with, again, the the funereal locker rooms and the ire towards Josh Wolf and the clear kind of discontent that was manifesting between players and coach.
Thanks for reminding me of that, Phil. I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased.
What I'm
to
here for.
Have my sense memory just reawaken to all of that pleasant stuff.
Historical perspective.
You bring up this term, the turn, and my mind immediately goes to poker because as much as I dislike sports betting, boy, do I love playing poker. And thinking of the turn as the fourth card in a Texas Hold'em game, this is around the point where you're gonna know if you're headed for a royal flush, a straight flush, or a toilet flush. There are indicators, and they are worth looking at. As much as I like to make fun of betting odds, there is wisdom in the numbers. There are trends that it is hard to pull out of. What I'd put to you, Phil, not to spoil the article, which is still in process, is how do you feel the winds are blowing? Is this they can steer out of this, or considering the rest of the West standings, this may be a pretty good place to finally be catching their groove when they're not beset upon by half a dozen injuries? What's the confluence of different factors that are at play beyond the averages, beyond the trends that we've seen in past seasons? How are you telling the story with this?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I think Ozuni and his ability to integrate with the rest of the team is pretty big in this, because at this point now, I'm not worried about Vasquez. I think that Vasquez has figured out what he's doing in terms of scoring. He's shown that recently. I don't think he's just necessarily on this kind of 3-game or 4-game heater. I think that he's getting more comfortable with this team. He's figuring it out. We've seen him able to create his own shot. We've seen him being able to also understand where the ball is going to be from those potential assists, and he's beginning to convert those more and more. I think Bukari in the last few games has looked so much better than he has in previous games. Ozuni, to me, is still the big wild card and still the big concern. They are on pace for 22 goals this season, and that needs to be better. They will not make the playoffs if they only score 22 goals. It's conceivable that they could, but it would be really weird, and it would be this kind of huge, bizarre storyline, and I think that it would definitely catch up to them in the playoffs. They are only on pace to let in 39 goals. That would be their best defensive season as well, and that would be certainly something to hang their hats on. But at the same time, they need to score. And then again, what happens in the summer? What players come? How quickly do they integrate with Beloko if he is here and is going to be activated? I would assume come July, come August, how quickly is he going to be able to have an effect? We saw Taylor, some promising things from him, but he got injured right away, and we don't know what kind of the long-term impact is going to be. I trust that he will be back in a few weeks. I trust that he will be fine, but it's disheartening in a way because he seemed like he was making progress and beginning to understand and build some chemistry with the players, and then he got bit by an injury, and now that has been delayed a little bit longer.
I'm going to take us metaphysical for a second. So with Brandon, Superman's flying.
Good.
I'm with you. Buka, I feel like I'm assigning all of these guys superhero identities. Buka's the Flash. Buka's the guy who is dueling 3 guys simultaneously. And now that his teammates are making themselves more available so that he can offload the ball to them, he's doing it. The Flash can only keep running so long before he starts traveling through time. So those things are working.
Okay.
The other aspect of things that isn't the play on the field, that isn't anything that's said in the locker room or on the pitch.
I want to know which superhero Zuni is.
I'll get there, because that one I had locked in from the first time we talked to him. There is something to the fact of when things go poorly for Austin, people have gotten accustomed to going, are we cursed? Oh, man. Oh, gosh. Oh, fire everyone, heads on pikes. The biggest thing that the fan base, that the audience that has been following this club needs. Sure, MLS Cup and Open Cup, that would be great. Supporter Shield on top of it while we're dreaming. Great. Let's just, all of the ideal things. Let's get all the way high on hopium. All of those things would be lovely. But substantively, the metaphysical thing that we need to see for the benefit of the community is the notion of there being a breaking of a sort of curse where one loss or one disappointing draw does not send people into those depths of depression and dejection that you
Right.
alluded to earlier.
We still seem
And
susceptible to that from time to time, don't
very
we?
susceptible, very susceptible. Phil, a draw against Vancouver, it was like people were having to do post-traumatic therapy where it was like, everybody, this is good. This is progress. It doesn't mean that, everything's sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows. But we have evidence that sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows do actually exist. We have been told reliably that they exist. And the key to this, as you said, is as much as Uzuni talks like the Hulk, he's got to show up like the Hulk and actually smash goal. He talks about being here to do work and to make the goals. And just like Hulk smash, Uzuni want goal. Uzuni smash goal, and everything is great. I'm very encouraged by the progress that we've seen in Brandon Osman getting more integrated with his fellow players. And I don't think, as I've posited, it would be a real bad thing if Mirto was some sort of a locker room problem. He doesn't seem to be. I've seen him in there plenty, and like he gets along great. Like there are little pods that people hang out with, and some of the guys are I have a very young child at home and I got to get the hell out of here dads. And some of them are, I have a very young child at home, but also I'm going to hang out with all my South American bros and have a good time a little bit, but then I'm going to get the hell out of there. And Mirto is in there with a bunch of the South American players and seems very comfortable with them. He's very tight with Danny. He seems very tight with a bunch of these guys. As much as the tendency among the fan base, among the audience that watches this club to go fire him into the sun. And even when I'll say something like, at the moment, the team looks better with him on the bench than with him on the field, I don't mean that as all right, well, throw him in the trash, 10 million out the window, light the fire, Anthony, burn the money and send him off into the stratosphere. It's that as the turn has come for Superman and the Flash, like I don't think a win against Minnesota is out of the question. I don't think it's out of the question that they find the rhythm for Mirto. And I'm not seeing or reading any of the kind of body language that is, this guy is on the outs, or this guy, nobody talks to him, any of that kind of thing. And you've seen the way that some of these guys dive. They're not Academy Award winning actors. They're not faking being friendly with the guy. There is that camaraderie. And I think that it has been wise of the sporting operation and Nico as a coach, Ilie as a captain, to say these things take time and watch us prove that.
Right.
As we've seen it proved. Now we just need it to actually turn that corner with Uzuni.
Okay. Yeah, I want to posit that Uzuni is kind of a bizarro Hulk, right? So right now he's Bruce Banner running around. Hear me out. So how does Bruce Banner turn into the Hulk?
That's his secret, Cap. He's always angry.
But usually, if it's emotions, if it's stress, if it's anger, then Banner is able to turn into the Hulk. So we're seeing Uzuni exhibit all these kind of frustrations and these like signs of stress because he's not scoring.
Phil, what you're seeing is
I think if he calms down,
okay, all right,
then he becomes Bizarro Hulk. So now we're conflating him with the Superman archvillain.
We could do an entire podcast about why I think Bizarro is the wrong thing to deploy here, because Bizarro just crazy zombie guy. I feel like there's a different kind of Hulk analogy here where it's part of the problem is he doesn't stay angry and rage filled enough. He lets the sadness get to him. He becomes the incredible sulk. And that's the issue is you see the shoulders slump.
Yeah.
And the corner he needs to turn, we've mentioned like it looks psychological, and it's something that I think he's finding and is doable and he's getting there. And I think a piece of it has been getting a little bit less Mirto Hulky here to score goals, giving advice to his teammates and that kind of thing. I think him chilling out a little bit and accepting the fact that he is human and mortal will allow him to embrace the Hulk inside of him and really properly Hulk out. That's the thing is we've seen the energy and we've seen it go just wide or sail over the crossbar. And we've seen all the tape. We've seen all of his highlights. We know that he's capable of it. It's finding that precision and letting his mind breathe and not freak himself out overthinking it and then falling apart for a whole game.
Okay. And that has been this week's episode of Austin FC Super Friends.
Yeah.
Which you are not going to get on any other Austin FC podcast. Nobody else does it like we do it. Let's talk a little bit about June. So 3 matches at Colorado on June 7th. That is currently the 7th team in the West. They are hosting Red Bulls on the 14th. That is the currently 10th ranked team in the East based on record. And then the Sounders away on the 28th, 6th in the West. Again, Sounders always dangerous, always do better in the later part of the season or most of the time. So the Sounders match worries me, but those other 2 seem eminently winnable, I want to say. Despite Colorado and track records and Kevin Cabral and bad luck in some games.
I feel like I'm parroting Nico lines and going, well, thinking about the next match and focusing on that. I feel like I will feel completely different about June on the other side of San Diego. Catch me 8 days from now, and I will probably have a more fully formed feeling about things, but instinctively, reflexively. I think Denverde away as a kind of traditional summer fixture, I feel like with my assumption that Austin comes out with a win against San Diego, I think that bodes well for them going to Denver or the general Denver area because it isn't actually Denver. As anybody who's had to Uber from Denver out to the stadium can definitely tell you by
Commerce
looking at their
City,
credit
baby.
card receipt.
Commerce City. It's not Denver.
I think that Red Bulls also having Open Cup going on and keeping them busy and putting some miles on their tire tread, that can be beneficial in terms of Austin hosting them at home beyond just the general advantage that should be there for a home fixture. Here's the thing. That Sounders fixture is fully on the other side of the break.
Yep.
And some of these players really hate Jesus Ferreira. I don't know if you're aware of this.
Oh, yeah. He's there now.
Some of them really hate him. And some
I've
of
been
them definitely have Areola's number 2.
Yeah. I've been playing this game lately. It keeps coming up. Oh, that's where that player is now. But I am aware of where Jesus Ferreira was and is.
So on top of that relationship, we're looking at the Sounders coming off of the other side of their Club World Cup group stage games.
Right. So they are playing Botafogo on the 15th of June. They are playing Atletico Madrid on the 19th. That's enticing. And they are playing PSG on June 23rd, possible Champions League champs, but let's hope not. And then round of 16 matches start on June 28th. There's no guarantee this game actually happens. If the Sounders find their way in there, I'm sure this gets postponed, which again, June's a weird month. You've got Gold Cup. You get Christian Pulisic in Q2 Stadium on June 19th. Wait, you do not, because he is not going to be playing in the Gold Cup because he needs a break because he has been playing a lot of games as of late. And so it's very possible that they just have 2 games in June and then they have this kind of massive extended break, which would be a good time for Izuni to go see his kid, I would think.
Other variables that I want to throw in here specific to Lumen Field. Because in addition to that being Seattle's home field for the Club World Cup, guess who else's it is? Inter Milan. So on the 21st, Inter plays Urawa, and 3 days before the currently scheduled Austin away fixture, Inter plays River Plate.
Okay, so bear with me. There is a reason that this matters, aside from the fact that I follow Inter Milan. Normally, Lumen Field is a turf field. Not a great turf field. I don't think any turf field is a great field, but it's being replaced for the Club World Cup with grass. There's a 3-day gap, like I said, between the Inter and River game and the Austin game. So, is the Seattle Sounders front office going to put the turf back in that 3-day gap? Or are they going to let Austin and Seattle play on the grass? Whether Seattle makes it out of the group stage or not, that Wednesday match that week is the last Club World Cup match that's going to be played there. So some kind of a transition is going to happen. The question is whether that janky old turf is going to be put right back into place and can cause problems, or if it's going to be the super chewed up natural field and they're just going to let it play that way. I don't know that we're going to necessarily get an answer to that before that theoretical match, if it theoretically happens.
And let's say also that Seattle does get knocked out in the group stages and they do play that game on the 28th because Sounders are not going to have any kind of conflict. You think their fans might be a little soccered out by that point and a little down, and maybe if there's a game to enjoy beautiful Seattle June weather and not be in a stadium but be somewhere else, like maybe on one of the piers having a meal or taking a ferry out to Bremerton or something like that, maybe they would do that instead. Hiking, camping, lots of things to do that aren't watching a team that just got knocked out of Club World Cup should that happen.
Phil, guess what?
Yeah.
There is no end to the hypotheticals, because you know what happens on July 5th?
Tell me.
An Austin home match against LAFC, unless LAFC wins the Club World Cup play-in against Club America and then makes it through the group stage of Club World Cup and are still playing in it. I'm just saying.
So we're saying it's wise not to project ahead to June quite yet.
Austin might have an exceptionally break.
Mm-hmm.
It's entirely possible. It's worth keeping in mind that it could happen. And Club World Cup is going to have more of a displacing effect than I think a lot of people initially may have assumed. The other aspect of this is both of those teams are eligible for an early international transfer window that no other MLS team is eligible for outside of the two others in the Club World Cup that are definitely in. LAFC would be eligible for it if they make it in, but they've got to make it in a week hence. So depending on various things,
right,
it could also result that the Seattle match happens and the LAFC match happen, and both of those teams will have freshly just stocked up on high-octane players that they don't have a Club World Cup to burn through them on. That special window being announced is something that there is the potential for more roster-based chaos than people might expect, where maybe they will temporarily be out of MLS roster rule compliance, but for the purpose of the Club World Cup, maybe the league won't care. But then what if the league not caring about Club World Cup and then they are still out of roster compliance and they immediately resume MLS league play? Then what happens?
I don't think they've thought that far through.
I don't think they have. And I hope somebody from the MLSFO is listening, because I'm just trying to help them out. That's all.
Right. Yeah. The other thing too, so in these hypotheticals, let's say that like Seattle and LAFC both advance. So you're going to have basically no games for Austin between June 14th and then July 8th, which of course is going to be their US Open Cup quarterfinal. And then again, if you're worried about the Gold Cup in that field, theoretically, if that July 5th match doesn't happen at Q2, their next home match after all the Gold Cup goodness, I'm using air quotes around goodness because I'm not sure how this tournament's going to be necessarily. I will probably get up for Gold Cup between now and then, but I'm not necessarily there right now. July 12th against New England. So again, a winnable game. That's going to be quite some time away from Q2. So I imagine that fans are going to be really eager to get back should there be those kind of breaks. You've got essentially a month with no home games. So I imagine fans will be raring for a home game at that point. Because then there's not another home game until August 9th.
Because of Leagues Cup, which Austin is not competing in.
And because they have two away matches, July 16th against the Galaxy and DC United on July 26th. Our friend Jared Stroud.
This is what makes this whole summer so incredibly juicy for me, is the sheer layers upon layers of chaos, is seeing what happens to Inter Miami in league play on the other side of Club World Cup. Maybe they do a long Club World Cup run, and maybe they end up playing in some of those very last stages in the glorious greater New York area known as New Jersey, which is where the semifinals and finals are being hosted.
Which would be very deserved given that they won the Supporters Shield to get there.
I cannot stop thinking about the sheer chaos of all of this stuff coming together. LAFC could be doing better. You don't think that Cherundolo is going to want his final season at that club to go the way that it's been trending? You want to assume that he wants to put some kind of a ring on it, but frankly, Seattle being depleted from a very high profile mega international tournament like this is something that benefits every team in the West that is looking to make up points. And LAFC theoretically being depleted from it if they beat Club America, which I'm not going to say is even remotely a certainty, the way that Club America has been playing.
Right.
And with the incredible, intense, they want Leon's spot more than anything, because it's not just bragging rights. It's not just the tournament. It's a combination of all of it. It'll be probably better for the Club World Cup if Club America makes it in terms of overall play quality. But boy, is it better for Austin if LAFC makes it.
Yeah, exactly. So root for Chicago, root for LAFC. Also sounding like a threat, but not a threat, but a suggestion, a gentle nudge, as it were, towards rooting for a team you normally don't root for.
Yeah.
Against a team you probably, well, maybe you root for Club America as well. I certainly do not.
There are people who double up.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Anything else we want to hit before we take off? We have talked about Super Friends, poker, a lot of hypotheticals. So we are definitely the soccer facing podcast that we always have been.
It's gonna be an interesting summer, Phil. I think we're getting out ahead of various conversations that people are gonna just start having in about 2 weeks. I think a lot of folks are still focused on the mayhem of May. It is still a really crazy month, and literally 3 fixtures could completely change the complexion of the table. One other thing I'd mention is, as we're recording here in about an hour and a half, Austin FC 2 kicks off against Minnesota 2, aka Mini-Sota, as I call them.
Right.
And when that team sheet drops, that'll determine who got on the plane and who definitely didn't, because if they are even on the bench for Austin FC 2, they didn't take them to Minnesota. And even though we have a slightly larger roster availability for league play than US Open Cup, I bet CJ Fodre is on that plane. I don't know if Micah Burton is. Jimmy Farcarlin has already said see you at Palmer Field, so I don't think Jimmy is on that plane. But it'll be interesting to see if I want to check and see if there is no surprise in our inboxes at 5:47 p.m. Phil. So I don't see any second team call ups. So it's exclusively going to be guys with first team contracts who got on the plane.
All right. Okay. Let's see. And yes, to your point about May and mayhem, you cannot spell mayhem without May. So that perfectly stands to reason.
That is like the worst thing I've ever heard in the history of the 7 years that I've been on this planet.